The Galactic Council Chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of crystalline architecture. Its domed ceiling displayed the rotating stars of 10,000 civilized worlds. 217 alien species sat in tiered galleries that rose higher than any building on Earth. Their combined attention focused on a single platform at the chamber's center. On that platform stood Marcus Webb, a 34-year-old mechanic from Portland, Oregon. He was the first human ever summoned before the Council's highest court. The charges were unprecedented: contamination of royal lineage, unlawful genetic inheritance claims, words that meant nothing to most humans, but carried the weight of death sentences in galactic law. Marcus kept his hands steady at his sides. His heart pounded against his ribs like a trapped animal. Behind him, through the chamber's vast observation windows, Earth hung in the void, a pale blue marble that the galaxy had ignored for centuries. Now, because of what he had unknowingly done, humanity's entire future depended on the next few hours. High Arbiter Voss leaned forward from the central throne. He was a towering figure with obsidian skin and 6 golden eyes that seemed to see through flesh and bone. His voice resonated through translation matrices, speaking every language simultaneously. Marcus Webb of Earth, you stand accused of producing offspring with Lady Thessaly Vorn of the Varanthi Dominion. She is the wealthiest individual in the Orion sector and 3rd in line to the Varanthi throne. Do you deny this? Marcus looked up at the alien faces surrounding him. Some were hostile. Some were curious. Most were simply cold and distant. Somewhere in the upper galleries, hidden among dignitaries, was the woman who had changed everything. I do not deny it, Marcus said clearly, but I did not know who she was. A ripple of disbelief spread through the chamber. The Varanthi delegation erupted in outrage. How could a human claim ignorance of the galaxy's most famous heiress? The translator system struggled to keep up with the angry voices, but Marcus held his ground. Because in that moment, he understood something the Council did not. This trial was not about punishing him. It was about deciding whether his daughter would inherit an empire or be erased from existence. And Marcus Webb, for all his ordinary origins, was not going to let that happen. 6 years earlier, on a rainy November morning in Portland, Marcus had no idea that aliens existed beyond news reports and distant sightings. He ran a small spacecraft repair shop near the newly established Earth spaceport. It was one of only 12 locations on the planet authorized for alien visitors. Most extraterrestrials avoided Earth entirely. They considered it a backwater world, useful only for exotic tourism and curiosity. Marcus was in a local coffee shop called the Copper Kettle when he noticed a woman struggling at the counter. She appeared human at first glance, tall and elegant, with pale silver blonde hair and striking violet eyes. But Marcus recognized the subtle shimmer of her skin, the way light bent differently around her face. She was Varanthi, a species known for their extreme beauty and their galaxy-spanning financial empire. The woman was frustrated. Her translation device had malfunctioned. She could not communicate with the confused barista behind the counter. Her credit interface was incompatible with Earth's primitive payment systems. She stood alone, clearly exhausted, trying to order something warm to drink. Without thinking, Marcus stepped forward. "Hey, let me help," he said. He pulled out his worn wallet and paid for her drink. A simple hot chocolate. He explained her order to the barista and handed her the steaming cup with a genuine smile. The woman looked at him with an expression he could not read. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. "Thank you," she said carefully. Her accent was strange but beautiful. "I am Thesa." "Marcus," he replied. "Welcome to Earth. Sorry about our payment systems. They are pretty outdated." She laughed softly. It was the first time in years anyone had made her laugh. Over the next 3 weeks, Thesa returned to the coffee shop every morning. Marcus learned she was on Earth, researching investment opportunities. She seemed far more interested in talking to him than in any business dealings. They discussed everything and nothing. His work on alien spacecraft, her travels across the galaxy, the small pleasures of rain and hot drinks and quiet mornings. What Marcus did not know could fill libraries. Thessaly Vorn had spent 2 centuries searching for something her species could not provide. A genetic match for offspring. The Varanthi were a dying race. Their gene pool had become so refined over millennia that natural reproduction was nearly impossible. Thessaly had visited hundreds of worlds and tested thousands of genetic samples. She had found nothing compatible. Until a routine medical scan during her Earth visit revealed something extraordinary. Human DNA showed remarkable compatibility with Varanthi biology. And one human in particular, a mechanic whose genetic signature she had obtained from a discarded coffee cup, showed a 99.7% match. This had never happened before with any species in recorded galactic history. Thessaly faced an impossible choice. She could reveal her identity and watch Marcus transform. Men always changed when they learned about money. Their kindness became calculation. Their smiles became masks, or she could continue the deception. Learn if this ordinary human might genuinely be what she had searched 200 years to find. She chose deception. 3 months passed like a dream. Marcus fell in love with a woman he believed worked in interstellar logistics, which was technically true. She owned the largest shipping conglomerate in the galaxy. Thessaly fell in love with a man who fixed broken spacecraft and remembered how she liked her coffee, and never once asked about her wealth or status, because he did not. No, the night everything changed began simply enough. Thessaly had invited Marcus to dinner at his small apartment above the repair shop. She had something to tell him, something important. But before she could speak, her communication device activated with an emergency signal. Her younger brother, Lord Caven Vorn, had traced her location. He was arriving on Earth within hours. Thessaly's face went pale. She made excuses and left quickly, promising to explain everything soon. That night, she did not answer Marcus's calls. For the first time, Marcus began to suspect that the woman he loved was not who she claimed to be. He lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had become so complicated. Above Earth, hidden behind the planet's moon, Thessaly's personal flagship waited in silence. The ship was worth more than the entire planet's economy. And in her private quarters aboard that vessel, a genetic analysis confirmed what she already suspected. Marcus Webb might be the answer to everything. But answers, she knew, always came with consequences. And the consequences were already racing toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds. Marcus spent 3 sleepless nights waiting for Thessa to return his calls. She never did. The coffee shop felt empty without her. His repair work suffered as his mind wandered to questions he could not answer. On the 4th day, a Varanthi diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere and landed at the spaceport. Marcus watched from his shop window as elegant figures in silver robes emerged. They moved with the cold precision of people who owned everything they touched. Something was very wrong. Marcus had spent years working at the spaceport. He had made friends among the alien traders and mechanics who passed through. These connections had taught him things most humans would never learn. How to read alien body language. How to recognize rank and status. How to tell when someone important had arrived. The figures from that diplomatic vessel carried themselves like royalty. He called his friend Brennan, a human dock supervisor with access to rival manifests. That Varanthi ship, Marcus said. Who is on board? Brennan's voice dropped to a whisper. You do not want to know, Marcus. Stay away from this one. Tell me. A long pause. Lord Caven Vorn, third most powerful person in the Varanthi Dominion. Brother to the heiress herself. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Heiress? Lady Thessaly Vorn, worth more than most star systems combined. Word is she has been hiding on Earth for months. Nobody knows why. Brennan paused. Marcus, you still there? Marcus ended the call without answering. The SSA. Thessaly, the woman who drank hot chocolate and laughed at his jokes about broken engines. The woman who had fallen asleep on his couch watching old Earth movies. The woman he had fallen in love with. She was one of the most powerful people in the galaxy, and she had lied to him about everything. Meanwhile, Thessaly was fighting a battle on two fronts. Her brother Caven had arrived with lawyers and genetic purity advocates. These were members of her own species who believed Varanthi blood must never be diluted by inferior races. If they discovered her relationship with Marcus, they would have grounds to strip her inheritance under ancient Varanthi law. The Galactic Council had also taken interest. Earth's diplomatic liaison, Ambassador Diana Cole, was summoned to explain why a high-profile Varanthi noble had been residing on Earth. Without proper documentation, Diana was a sharp woman in her 50s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 20 years building Earth's reputation in galactic politics. She recognized immediately that humanity had stumbled into something far larger than a simple immigration issue. Lady Thessaly, Diana said during their private meeting, I need to understand what is happening. Your brother is making accusations that could damage Earth's diplomatic standing. Thessaly sat in a sterile conference room at the spaceport. Her elegant composure had cracked. Dark circles shadowed her violet eyes. I came to Earth searching for a genetic match, she admitted. My species is dying, Ambassador. We cannot reproduce naturally anymore. Our gene pool has become too refined. She paused. I found what I was looking for. A human man whose DNA is compatible with Varanthi biology. Diana leaned forward. Marcus Webb, the mechanic. You know him? I know everything that happens at this spaceport. Diana's expression softened slightly. Does he know who you are? No. Thessaly's voice was barely a whisper. I wanted to see if he could love me without knowing, without the titles and the money changing everything. And does he? Love you? Thessaly could not answer, because she did not know anymore what was real and what was wishful thinking. That evening, Marcus was working late in his repair shop. The familiar smell of engine oil and metal shavings surrounded him. He was trying to focus on a damaged thruster assembly, but his hands kept shaking. The shop door opened. Thessaly stood in the doorway. She looked smaller somehow, less like a mysterious stranger, and more like someone carrying an unbearable weight. I need to explain, she said quietly. You are Lady Thessaly Vorn. Marcus's voice was flat. Worth more than my entire planet. And you let me pay for your hot chocolate. I let you be kind to me. She stepped closer. Do you know how rare that is? Real kindness? Not kindness that wants something in return? You lied to me. I did. She did not look away from his eyes. I was afraid. I had searched for 200 years, Marcus. 200 years of disappointment. And then I found you. A mechanic in a coffee shop who smiled at a stranger and asked for nothing. Marcus turned away. His hands gripped the edge of his workbench. Why me? Out of everyone in the galaxy? Because your DNA is compatible with mine. Because you could give me something my own species cannot provide anymore. She paused. A child. The word hung in the air between them. So this was all about breeding? Marcus asked bitterly. It started that way. Thessaly's voice cracked. It did not stay that way. Somewhere between the coffee and the movies and the quiet mornings, I fell in love with you. I did not mean to. I did not want to. But I did. Before Marcus could respond, the shop door burst open again. Lord Caven Vorn entered with a squad of Varanthi security forces. They carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Caven himself was tall and coldly beautiful, with the same silver hair as his sister, but none of her warmth. "So this is the human," Caven said with disgust. "This is what my sister has degraded herself with." Marcus stepped in front of Thessaly instinctively. "Get out of my shop." Caven laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You think you can protect her? You are nothing. A primitive creature from a primitive world. Caven, stop this." Thessaly moved beside Marcus. "This is not your concern. Not my concern?" Caven's 6 eyes narrowed. "You are carrying genetic material from this creature. The Purity faction has already been informed. Your position as heir is finished, sister. Unless you submit to genetic cleansing immediately." Thessaly's hand found Marcus's. Her fingers were trembling. "I will not," she said firmly. Caven smiled coldly. "Then you leave me no choice. Seize them both." The security forces raised their weapons. But before they could fire, the shop filled with a blinding light. When it faded, Ambassador Diana Cole stood in the doorway with Earth's first interstellar legal team and a squad of human soldiers. "Lord Caven Vorn," Diana said calmly, "you are in violation of Earth's sovereign territory. The Galactic Council has taken jurisdiction over this matter. You will stand down immediately." Caven's face twisted with fury. But even he could not openly defy a council order. "This is not over," he hissed at Marcus. "The galaxy will never accept your contamination of Varanthi blood." As the security forces withdrew, Marcus looked at Thessaly. Her hand was still in his. Despite everything, despite the lies and the revelations and the armed standoff in his repair shop, he had not let go Dot, and neither had she. The situation was now public. Every news network in the galaxy was broadcasting the story. A Varanthi heiress. A human mechanic. The first interspecies inheritance. Dispute in galactic history. Everything was about to change. The legal battle began immediately. Thessaly was summoned before the Varanthi High Council on her homeworld. Marcus, as the accused party, was granted permission to attend with Earth's diplomatic delegation. This marked the first time humans had ever been allowed into the Varanthi, Dominion's inner territories. The journey took 17 days through faster-than-light corridors that bent space like fabric. Marcus spent most of that time in a small cabin aboard the diplomatic vessel, trying to process everything that had happened. Thessaly visited him on the 3rd night. She stood in his doorway, looking uncertain. It was strange to see her this way, the most powerful woman in the galaxy, hesitating to enter a cramped spacecraft cabin. "May I come in?" she asked. Marcus nodded. She sat beside him on the narrow bunk. Neither spoke for a long moment. "I need you to understand something," Thessaly finally said. "When I first came to Earth, you were just data to me. A genetic profile. A solution to a biological problem. That is not exactly romantic. No, it is not." She turned to face him. "But then I met you, the actual person behind the data, and everything changed." Marcus looked at her. "Why should I believe you now? After all the lies?" "You should not," she admitted. "Trust must be earned. I destroyed yours. I am asking for a chance to rebuild it. Nothing more. What if I say no?" Thessaly's violet eyes glistened. "Then I will face the council alone. I will not force you into something you did not choose." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Through the cabin's small window, unfamiliar stars streaked past in ribbons of light. "When I was a kid," he said slowly, "my father told me something. He said you can tell who a person really is by what they do when no one is watching. When there is nothing to gain, Thessaly listened silently. That morning in the coffee shop, Marcus continued, you were alone, frustrated, struggling with something simple. And when I helped you, you smiled. Not the smile of someone calculating their next move. The smile of someone genuinely grateful. He paused. I have to believe that was real. Otherwise, nothing makes sense. Thessaly reached for his hand. Her skin was cooler than human skin, with that strange shimmer he had noticed the first day. It was real, she whispered. The only real thing in my life for 200 years. On the Varanthi homeworld, the political situation was worse than expected. Lord Caven had allied with the genetic purity faction. These conservatives viewed human DNA as an existential threat to Varanthi civilization. They had proposed a radical solution. If Thessaly would not submit to genetic cleansing, she must be stripped of her title and exiled. The Varanthi capital was a city of impossible beauty. Towers of living crystal rose toward a lavender sky. Rivers of liquid light flowed through streets that had existed for 10,000 years. Everything gleamed with ancient wealth and refined elegance. Marcus felt like a grain of sand in an ocean of diamonds. Ambassador. Diana Cole prepared their legal strategy in a borrowed suite overlooking the central plaza. She had barely slept since leaving Earth. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her mind remained sharp. The Purity faction is powerful, she explained to Marcus and Thessaly. But they are not the majority. Many Varanthi understand that their species is dying. They know something must change. Then why do they not speak up? Marcus asked. Fear, Thessaly answered. Our culture values tradition above everything. Challenging the purity doctrine means challenging our entire identity. Diana nodded, which is why this trial matters so much. If we win, it will not just protect you. It will force the Varanthi to confront a truth they have been avoiding for centuries. The first council session was brutal. Lord Caven presented evidence of Thessaly's deception. Her secret trips to Earth, her concealed relationship with a human, her deliberate pursuit of hybrid offspring. Each revelation drew gasps and murmurs from the assembled Varanthi nobles. My sister has betrayed everything our species represents, Caven declared. She has contaminated our sacred bloodline with primitive genetic material. This is not love. This is biological treason. Marcus watched from the observation gallery. Human ambassadors were not permitted to speak during Varanthi proceedings. He could only sit and listen as his relationship was dissected like a laboratory specimen. But Diana Cole had been doing her own research. During a recess, she pulled Marcus and Thessaly into a private room. I found something, Diana said, her voice tight with urgency. Something the Varanthi have kept hidden for centuries. She displayed a holographic chart filled with population statistics and medic. All data. Your species is not merely declining, Diana continued, looking at Thessaly. You are dying. At current rates, the Varanthi will be extinct within 3 generations. No new children have been born naturally in 70 years. Thessaly's face paled. How did you access that information? I have my sources. Diana turned to Marcus. Do you understand what this means? Thessaly's search for a compatible match was not personal ambition. It was a desperate attempt to save her entire people. Marcus looked at Thessaly. Is this true? Yes. Her voice was barely audible. I did not want you to know. I did not want to burden you with the weight of an entire species. Before Marcus could respond, Thessaly suddenly swayed. She gripped the edge of a table, her face going from pale to ghostly white. What is wrong? Marcus moved to support her. I have been feeling unwell for weeks. She took a shaky breath. I thought it was stress. But the medical scans confirmed something else this morning. Diana's eyes widened. Lady Thessaly, Are you saying what I think you are saying? Thessaly straightened. Her hand moved to her stomach in a gesture that transcended species and cultures. I am pregnant, she said quietly. The child is viable. The first viable Voranthi offspring conceived in 70 years. Silence filled the room. Marcus felt the floor shift beneath him. Not literally, but something fundamental had changed in that moment. The father, Diana said slowly. The father is human? Yes. Thessaly looked at Marcus with an expression he had never seen before. Hope and fear and love all tangled together. Our daughter is half human, half Voranthi, something that has never existed before. Marcus sat down heavily. His mind raced through the implications. A daughter, his daughter, carrying the future of two species in her unborn cells. We need to tell the council, Diana said firmly. This changes everything. Thessaly nodded. I know. When she returned to the council chamber, the assembled nobles expected more legal arguments, more debates about tradition and purity. Instead, Thessaly Vorn announced her pregnancy to the galaxy. I carry the first viable Voranthi child in 7 decades, she declared. Her father is human. You may call this contamination. I call it survival. I call it hope. Lord Caven's face twisted with rage. The Purity faction erupted in protests. But across the chamber, something else was happening. Voranthi nobles were looking at Thessaly differently. Not with disgust, with wonder. Some of them had tears streaming down their alien faces. A child. After all these years of silence. A child. The council session dissolved into chaos. But through the noise and confusion, Marcus caught Thessaly's eye across the vast chamber. She smiled at him. A real smile. The same one from that rainy morning in the coffee shop dock, and despite everything, despite the politics and the lies and the impossible situation they faced, Marcus smiled back, because somewhere in the galaxy, their daughter's heart was beginning to beat. The announcement sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. A Voranthi human hybrid had never existed. The child represented either the salvation of a dying species or, as the Purity faction claimed, an abomination that must be destroyed. Lord Caven moved swiftly. He petitioned the Galactic Council to intervene directly. He argued that the pregnancy violated ancient laws governing protected genetic lineages. Under these laws, the Council had authority to terminate pregnancies, deemed galactically destabilizing. Marcus found himself at the center of the most significant legal battle in galactic history. The question was not merely whether his daughter had the right to exist. It was whether humanity had the right to participate in the genetic future of the galaxy. The trial was moved to the Grand Judgment Chamber on the Council's neutral station, the same chamber where Marcus would eventually stand accused. But for now, he was simply a witness, a human mechanic whose ordinary life had collided with extraordinary circumstances. 217 species sent representatives. Some had traveled for weeks through space to attend. The galaxy was watching. The prosecution built their case with surgical precision. Lord Caven and his allies argued that genetic integrity was the foundation of galactic civilization. Each species had evolved separately over millions of years. Mixing bloodlines threatened the stability that had kept the Council functioning for millennia. This is not about one child, Caven declared to the assembly. This is about preserving the natural order. Today it is Voranthi and humans. Tomorrow it will be others. Where does contamination end? When every species has lost its unique identity? The defense was led by Ambassador Diana Cole and Thessaly herself. They argued that the Voranthi situation proved the opposite of what the prosecution claimed. Genetic isolation led to extinction. The galaxy's future depended on cooperation, adaptation, and the willingness to embrace new possibilities. The Varanthi have followed the path of purity for 10,000 years, Diana told the assembly. And where has it led them? To empty nurseries, to silence where children's laughter should be, to a countdown toward extinction that cannot be stopped by tradition alone. The trial lasted 9 days. Marcus watched from the witness gallery, feeling increasingly helpless. Legal arguments flew over his head. Ancient precedents were cited in languages he did not understand. Species he had never heard of weighed in with opinions that ranged from supportive to hostile. On the 10th day, Marcus was called to testify. He stood on the central platform, surrounded by hundreds of alien faces. The weight of their attention pressed down on him like a physical force. High Arbiter Voss looked at him with 6 unreadable golden eyes. "Marcus Webb of Earth," the Arbiter said. "The Council wishes to understand your perspective on these proceedings. You are not a diplomat or a lawyer or a scientist. You are, by your own admission, a mechanic who fixes broken spacecraft." "That is correct," Marcus said. His voice sounded small in the vast chamber. "Then tell us, in your own words, why you believe your daughter deserves to live." Marcus had prepared a statement with Diana's help. Facts and arguments and legal reasoning. But standing there, facing the judgment of the galaxy, all those prepared words felt hollow. He spoke from his heart instead. "I do not know anything about genetic purity or galactic stability," Marcus began. "I know that 6 years ago, I saw someone who needed help, and I helped her. It was a small thing, a hot drink on a cold morning. I did not know who she was. I did not care." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I know that I fell in love with someone who happened to be from another world. I know that she lied to me about who she was, because she was afraid of what truth would do to us. I know that despite everything, when I think about her, I still feel the same way I did when we first talked in that coffee shop." The chamber was silent. Every translator matrix hummed softly, carrying his words to hundreds of species. "My daughter did not choose any of this," Marcus continued. "She did not choose her parents or her genetics or the politics surrounding her birth. She is innocent of prejudice and fear and the ancient arguments that have brought us here today." He looked up at the High Arbiter directly. "If the galaxy decides that love between different peoples is a crime, then the galaxy has already lost whatever it claims to be protecting. Purity without compassion is just another word for loneliness. And I would rather be contaminated by love than purified by hate." Silence held for a long moment. Then, from somewhere in the upper galleries, someone began to applaud. The sound spread. Species that had no stake in the Varanthi dispute found themselves moved by the simplicity of Marcus's argument. A mechanic from a backwater world had spoken a truth that transcended genetic boundaries, but Lord Caven was not finished. He rose from his seat with a cold smile. A touching speech. But the Council should not be swayed by primitive sentiment. "I have evidence that reveals the true nature of this so-called love." He activated a holographic display. Documents and recordings filled the chamber. Medical reports. Surveillance footage. Genetic analyses dated months before Marcus and Thessaly ever met. "My sister selected this human specifically for his genetic compatibility," Caven declared. "She tracked him. She studied him. She engineered their meeting to appear coincidental. The relationship was never genuine. It was a breeding strategy disguised as romance." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "The human was manipulated from the very beginning," Caven continued. "He was a tool, a means to an end. Whatever he believes about love and connection is nothing more than biological deception." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had known about the genetic selection, but hearing it laid out so clinically, so publicly, stripped away any comfort he had built around that knowledge. He looked at Thessaly across the chamber. Her face had gone pale. "Lady Thessaly Vorn," High Arbiter Voss spoke. You must address these accusations directly. The council requires your testimony. Thessaly rose slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned toward her. 217 species waited for her to speak. You have heard my brother's evidence, she began. I will not deny any of it. I did select Marcus for his genetic profile. I did engineer our first meeting. I did conceal my identity. Everything he has said is factually accurate. Marcus closed his eyes. Despite everything, hearing her confirm it still hurt. But facts do not tell the whole truth, Thessaly continued. Yes, I approached Marcus as a biological solution. Yes, I calculated every detail of our first encounter. But what I did not calculate was how it would feel when he smiled at me. What I did not anticipate was how his kindness would reach something inside me that I thought had died centuries ago. Her voice grew stronger. I have lived for 200 years. I have been surrounded by wealth and power and people who wanted something from me. Every relationship in my life has been a transaction. Every kindness has come with a price. I learned to trust no one, to expect nothing, to protect myself behind walls of cold logic. She looked directly at Marcus. Then a mechanic in a coffee shop bought me a hot drink because I looked cold. He did not know who I was. He did not want anything. He simply saw someone struggling and chose to help. In 200 years of searching, I had never encountered anything like that. It broke something open inside me that I cannot put back together. Tears streamed down her face. She made no effort to hide them. My brother asks whether any of this was real. I do not know how to answer that question with certainty. What I know is that when I am with Marcus, I feel alive. When I think about losing him, I feel fear. When I imagine our daughter growing up without knowing her father, I feel pain that has no logical explanation. She turned to face the full assembly. If that is not love, then I do not understand what love is supposed to be. And if the council decides that such feelings are insufficient, that only genetically sanctioned relationships can be real, then perhaps the galaxy is already more dead than my dying species. The chamber fell absolutely silent. High Arbiter Voss's 6 golden eyes blinked slowly. The council will deliberate, he announced. We will reconvene in 1 standard day to deliver judgment. As the assembly dispersed, Marcus caught Thessaly's eye one final time. Everything now rested on a decision they could not control. Wait began. The deliberation lasted 17 hours. Marcus and Thessaly waited in a small chamber reserved for defendants. The room was sterile and cold, designed to offer no comfort. Outside, the galaxy held its breath. Neither of them slept. Sometime during the long night, Thessaly reached for Marcus's hand. He took it without hesitation. They sat together in silence, watching unfamiliar stars through a narrow window, waiting for the universe to decide their fate. Whatever happens, Marcus said quietly, I want you to know something. Thessaly looked at him. When you asked if I believed any of it was real, he continued, I did not answer. But the truth is, I stopped caring whether it started as calculation or not. What matters is what it became. What matters is right now, sitting here with you, not knowing what tomorrow brings. That is not logical, Thessaly whispered. No, Marcus smiled slightly. It is human. The summons came at dawn. The grand judgment chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread across the galaxy. This verdict would shape interspecies relations for generations. Every news network in existence was broadcasting live. Marcus and Thessaly took their places on the central platform. High Arbiter Voss sat upon his throne, his obsidian face unreadable. The other arbiters flanked him in perfect stillness. The council has reached a decision, Voss announced. His voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. Marcus felt Thessaly's hand tighten around his. The question before us was never truly about genetics or inheritance, Voss continued. It was about whether the galaxy believes in possibility or surrenders to fear. The Varanthi face extinction. Humanity offers a chance at survival. The child conceived by Marcus Webb and Thessaly Vorn represents the first step toward a future neither species could achieve alone. A ripple of anticipation passed through the assembly. Our ruling is as follows. Voss paused, his 6 golden eyes sweeping across the chamber. The pregnancy is protected under galactic law. Any attempt to terminate it will be considered an act of aggression against both Earth and the Varanthi Dominion. Marcus exhaled a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Furthermore, Voss continued, the child, when born, will be recognized as a legal citizen of both Earth and the Varanthi Dominion. She will hold inheritance rights in both civilizations. No faction may challenge these rights without facing council sanction. Lord Caven's face contorted with rage. He rose from his seat as if to protest, but Voss silenced him with a gesture. There is one final matter. Lord Caven Vorn has been found guilty of attempting to subvert council authority and violate sovereign territorial rights on Earth. He is hereby stripped of his position and banned from holding political office. Within the Varanthi Dominion, Caven's supporters erupted in outrage. Security forces moved to contain them. But the verdict stood. The council had spoken. Additionally, Voss said, and his voice carried a note of something almost like warmth, the council formally invites humanity to participate in the Galactic Genetic Exchange Program. Earth's biological diversity may hold solutions to problems older civilizations cannot solve alone. The galaxy has underestimated humanity for too long. This error will be corrected. Applause broke out across the chamber. Not from everyone, but from enough. Species that had never paid attention to Earth began to see the small blue world differently. Marcus turned to Thessaly. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling. We won, she whispered. Our daughter won, Marcus corrected gently. We just helped. 8 months later, in a private medical facility orbiting the Varanthi homeworld, Thessaly gave birth. The child arrived at dawn, as if choosing the symbolic moment deliberately. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's violet eyes. She was healthy and strong, and crying loudly. The first infant sound heard on a Varanthi world in over 7 decades. They named her. Elara. Marcus held his daughter for the first time in a quiet room filled with soft golden light. The weight of her in his arms was impossibly precious. Such a small thing to carry such enormous significance. Hello, he whispered. I am your father, and I have a feeling you are going to change everything. Elira's tiny hand wrapped around his finger. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Thessaly watched them from her bed, exhausted but radiant. For the first time in 2 centuries, she allowed herself to believe in a future. On Earth, news of the birth was celebrated with a joy that surprised everyone. Humanity's status in the galaxy had shifted overnight. They were no longer backwater primitives to be ignored. They were the species that had saved the Varanthi from extinction. Diplomatic overtures flooded in from dozens of worlds eager to establish relationships. Ambassador Diana Cole was promoted to lead Earth's first Galactic Integration Council. Her opening statement to the press was simple. We paid for a stranger's drink, and the galaxy paid attention. The Varanthi began to change as well. The Purity faction lost influence rapidly in the wake of the trial. Young Varanthi, hungry for hope, looked to Elara as a symbol of possibility. Interspecies research programs were established. Other worlds with declining populations began exploring genetic exchange partnerships. The universe was shifting, slowly, imperfectly, but shifting nonetheless. 1 year after Alara's birth, Marcus and Thessaly stood on a balcony overlooking the Varanthi capital. Below them, crowds had gathered, not in protest, as Lord Caven's supporters once had. In celebration. The first festival of new beginnings was being held in Ilara's honor. Children's laughter rose from the streets. Not many children yet, but more than there had been. Enough to sound like hope. So what happens now? Marcus asked, his arm around Thessaly. She leaned into him. Now we raise our daughter, and we show the galaxy what humans and Varanthi can build together. That sounds like a lot of work. It will be. She smiled. But I have been waiting 200 years for work that matters. I do not intend to waste the opportunity. Ilara gurgled happily in her mother's arms, reaching toward the colored lights rising from the celebration below. Marcus laughed softly. All of this because I bought you a hot chocolate. All of this because you were kind, Thessaly corrected him. The galaxy has forgotten kindness. Perhaps it is time someone reminded them. Marcus thought about his small repair shop in Portland, a coffee shop where everything began. The hot chocolate he had bought for a stranger on a rainy morning. He had never imagined such a small act could lead to such enormous consequences. But maybe that was the point. Maybe kindness was never small. Maybe it only seemed that way until you traced its ripples far enough above them. Earth shone among the unfamiliar constellations. A pale blue world that had changed the course of galactic history. Not through technology, or military power, or political maneuvering. Through something simpler. Through a mechanic who saw someone struggling and chose to help. Through a woman who let herself be helped. Through a daughter who would grow up knowing that love could bridge any distance. The festival continued below. Music and lights and the sound of species mingling freely. Marcus held his family close and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, other worlds were waking up to new possibilities. Other relationships were forming across the boundaries that had once seemed absolute. Other children would be born who carried the genetics of multiple species. The universe was vast and old, and often cold, but kindness, it turned out, was contagious, and that was enough to change everything.